very similar or identical to what you did in the previous grants?
I'd have to read it further, but it would be different. It would be for recruitment or outreach, possibly, to increase recruitment of underserved communities for all programs in the district.
That would seem that a grant reader following the RFA as a guide would see that as being sufficiently different, that you should be fine. And I think the key that you just brought up was very important. Go back and read into what you've done before, look at the individual programs and look at what you want to do. And if it is going in profitably a different direction that says, this is not doing the same thing. And doing the same thing could be, we purchased a table saw last time, we're going to purchase a planer this time. We purchased a table saw last time. This time we're working on our equity and access to expand the reach of our program. Those are two fairly different things. So you want it to be different. It should not just be a redo of what you've done before. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Looking for hands up.
Looked like Lori has her hand up.
Oh, fantastic.
Laura?
Okay, Laura already went. Do we have anybody else who has questions?
Who should we contact when we're getting into the grant running process? Because we've gotten a couple of these grants before. Who do you want us to call, to email or call with questions?
Thank you very much, Jill, for that question. Kyle's going to drop the email address into the chat that you'll be able to use. And this is the email address for the CTE Revitalization Grant team. It can be, all of your correspondence can be directed to the team. Okay. One of us will pick it up and respond. If it's one of those kind of confusing questions, we actually collaborate and have a conversation and see how we can best help you. But that's the best place to go. It also eliminates the possibility that the one you write to is the one that's off sick. And we want you to get the answer as quickly as humanly possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions?
Anybody willing to bounce an idea off us, what you're looking at, or?
Hi, this is Chuck Getter. I've got a question for you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, Chuck, we can hear you.
How are you?
I'm looking for guidance, and I bet everybody else would like to hear just a little bit about how in the past we've had collaborators, and now we have, and the new word and concept, and I kind of get what it is, but could you just discuss and give us some guidance on partners, and especially the idea of them providing value added? And I'll have a follow-up question.
You want to take the first cut at that, Art?
You bet. And as a matter of fact, I just want to use your situation down there as an example. From what I can remember, the partnerships and the collaborations you have are very strong with, it seems, city and government down there on the coast. Also with Oregon State University. Those are the kind of partnerships that really make or break a program, especially the Oregon State University one you had. Where you're able to pull out certain people to come talk to the students based on their experience, but also their gender and their gender experience, what they've gone up against, working on a boat. I'm trying to think of who you haven't partnered with down there. It seems like you've partnered with the Bay there to do some estuary work, and that's what we're looking for is some real meaningful relationships that are ongoing with partners. The most natural one is post-secondary as a community partner, but also don't forget your STEM hub. With those STEM hubs in the United States or in Oregon, you can go to that. The third one is the workforce groups. We talked about that during the second meeting. To reach out to them, they've got ins with State of Oregon and Department of Education and Department of Employment that can help you. So we're looking to expand that partnership because that's the way that these programs are going to be more sustainable too in the future. We're not talking about monetary all the time. It could be materials. It could be materials in kind. It could be teaching. Out in Baker, they actually have a deal with one of the welding shops where they pay that welder's salary for a day to come in and teach. That's a creative way of doing something out there. I'm not going to talk about the logistics and the licensure and all that stuff. We'll work that out. But they're being creative and trying to get the professional into the classroom.
And would it be an appropriate expense to get the professional in to teach teachers?
More is like guest teachers, guest lecturers. This one was more structured than that. It was a specific day or a couple of days each week that person would actually come from their job, and the employer was paying part of it. The school was helping pay a part of that. So they were working together on that. I can't tell you the financial arrangements, but they made it happen. And boy, the students just respected that person coming in like a professional from the outside, snapped to attention. He had their full attention and cooperation. It was a good story. Anyone else have any ideas of some partnerships we could explore and build on?
So my question is about partnerships, but it's kind of more of a technical question. This is Adam Whalen from the Willamette Promise. I work at an ESD, and so ESDs are, eligible to apply for this funding as well. But can you kind of talk about, like, in terms of partnership, we're thinking about potentially positioning this application at the Willamette Career Academy that serves 11 of our component districts with high school programming, I'll call it. So as far as partnerships, when we get kind of letters of support where we as an ESD are writing this RFA to support our component districts, those 11 districts specifically, that doesn't exclude them from applying for this grant as well, correct? Like, I'm just wondering about some of the nuanced details about ESDs or programs from ESDs applying for this funding in support of our districts and how that works for the district's own applications.
Adam, I would say that the pivotal issue here is what program of study are you starting or growing, as opposed to it being kind of a shotgun approach across all of the programs of study across all the schools in the ESD. Ultimately, the legislative intent of this work was to either initiate new programs or revitalize existing programs with the idea you're going to provide an arc for the success of students starting out as learners and eventually turning into earners on the other end. Obviously not in the life of the grant, that's unrealistic, but it sends them in the right direction. So I guess back to you, what are you looking at in terms of where that might go with that sort of a parameter in mind?
Yeah, so let me be more specific. The programs that we would focus on in our phase 1 at the Willamette Career Academy, I think we won't focus too much on phase 2. So we just have 3 programs of study here at this brand new school.
Mm-hmm.
And this might be not super helpful to the larger group on the Zoom call. So if we want to discuss after this meeting, I'm happy to stick around and it's like a consortia kind of level high school where we have a CTE high school that serves our districts with
Sure.
programs of study that they might not necessarily have at their home campuses.
What, Adam, I like where this is going. What I might suggest is what we have suggested to other programs who have questions about how they want to move. And we clearly don't make a decision about whether it's a go, no go, but we talk about strengths, weaknesses, and possible situations. But we schedule a separate call. I don't know how much time people have after. I have kind of squishy availability right after this. So I think it might be better if you want to go ahead and use the email address, send us an email real quick, and then we'll engage in a little bit of a scheduling conversation. And within the next couple of days, we'll find some time when we can have a conversation to talk about this.
Yep, that sounds great, Dan. That sounds like a good pathway forward. Okay.
Fantastic, super. Chuck, did that help? I see that your mic is still open, so I just want to make sure you're getting what you need.
Yeah, Dan, that does. As Art said, we've teamed up with everybody but post-secondary, and this time it's a little different. When you team up with post-secondary, there are packages that they can provide that are awesome, like whole sections of training. And so you bring them on board, and it's not like working with the state or STEM Hub or Workforce. Well, it is like Workforce. Workforce can do the same thing as a partner. You can call them and make an arrangement, and they go, yeah, well, for this much, we can provide that. And then you can put that in as your, your partner part. But it's a little different, and I do understand the difference, mainly because we're going with people that have kind of a set curriculum already. And if you call Workforce and they want to help you, say, put some of the people in your program into jobs, which is what they do, or workforce, training, they actually understand that. So I haven't run into that before, because we have invented it as we went along last time. So what about this? What about that? So I think I understand is the people we're partnering with this time are a little different. It's actually easier to work with some of these partners because they expect the call. They know kind of what you want, as long as you tell them how we could team up. So I got it. Thanks.
Good. Great. In my other life, I deal a lot with nonprofits, and we're fond of talking about the concepts of time, treasure, and talent. And that's really what your partners and your collaborators bring to the table. And sometimes they bring things, which is great. But sometimes what you need is their individual talents and connections. You're talking about all of that, and you're talking about the relationship with your post-sex. So you're really, collaborators and partners are, many times they have some similar characteristics. So rather than, looks good. Art, did you have anything you wanted to amplify there? I see your mic's open.
No.
You're good? Okay.
Yeah, good.
Good questions today. Yes, Laura, go ahead.
Yes, I have two more questions. Thank you. And one is, so for work-based learning experiences, sometimes students might have problem accessing it because of transportation, like bus transportation. Would that be possible to fund bus transportation for students to get to and from career tours or other sites?
And Gabby just kicked an answer in there.
So bus tickets, but what if it was like to help offset the school district's expenses to provide bus transportation? Let's say we get charged a certain amount for that bus driver to drive a group of students. Could it be within the school district, not using our public transit?
I would want to have a conversation with Reynold Gardner, the person who knows more about Perkins finance than anyone else, really, and just making sure that anything that would be looked at or done in support of a Perkins program of study wouldn't constitute supplanting. And so we're going to pull that off to the side and make sure we get, oh, Gabby's got her hand up.
Yeah, and I would also just say, Laura, that what would be expected in your proposal is that we would need to see how you're going to sustain that after the life of the grant. So although if that is an allowable expense, you'll still need to figure out how to continue that service, even if the grant goes away. And therefore, I would suspect that Reynolds' response is going to be that it's the responsibility of the district to figure out how to use other funds to do that, and not these funds, since they're just sort of a one-time deal. So you can use for bus tickets and things like that. However, I can get that information, Dan, and put it in the chat here, but I would just think about ways that your district could be able to cover those costs for those transportation, because this is not a sustainable model.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then my second question is, if we were to write a grant that includes all our programs of study to enhance them, but we also wanted to start up a new program of study, can that be all combined together, or is that kind of a separate thing? Because I know you have different categories. You have startup and then growing a grant, growing a CTE area. So can we just put it all together? We are going to create a new one and grow our current ones.
Wow, that's a good question. Yes, if you include, I would say yes, if you include all of those in your goals and what you want to accomplish, it's a little larger umbrella.
I think the key there is knitting together in such a way that there's a coherent thread going through it. And if in fact it is around, and I believe you mentioned equity and access, it's how well you tell the story. And also remember, it's $125,000, which goes away very quickly when you start investing it. So conceivably, yes, but you would have to develop it in such a way that it portrayed a comprehensive, compelling story, and people could see how the pieces knit together to get you from where your grant starts to where your grant goes, and then support sustainability and moving forward. Because we would hope that it would be a springboard to future development, and also understanding that it has to have a sustainability piece in it.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, McMinnville's in the same situation. That's why I asked the question about the sustainability. Wouldn't it be more sustainable for us to have, say I'm going to do a new pathway and I'm going to bring in engineers to teach our teachers? Wouldn't that be more sustainable than teaching our kids?
That largely depends on how you're able to do it over time. I mean, if you're really getting true sustainability there, and if you're able to support ongoing professional development for the teachers after the grant is over, in the spirit of what you started out to do, then I think you could. And again, it's how you write it and how you tell the story, and what the grant readers will think of it when they see it and they examine it. But thinking about where you get your impact, and also how you're going to be able to sustain it. Now, of course, if you decide that you can sustain it with general fund, or you can sustain it with other funds available to the school, then clearly you'll want to tell that story.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Christopher, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess it's a similar question in terms of the one grant versus multiple grants, but slightly different scenario. So I've been kind of tapped to work on 2 different grants coming from 2 different schools, but within the same district, with a similar mission, but they're like very distinct projects. With the only real similarity is we're looking to expand our programs of study to create more offerings, create greater access for students, but also, connect what we're doing with industry. And so I've been debating this whole time about whether we're at cross odds by submitting 2 grants from the same district. And so I guess I'd love for you to weigh in. One of them is going to be a relatively higher ask, probably not necessarily the whole 125, and one of them is a significantly lower ask, really just looking for support in curriculum development and planning to expand this program, and then to purchase the necessary equipment to get it up and off the ground. This next level. Is that something are we better off one grant that has these 2 totally separate things? I'm a little concerned about the word count and being able to actually fully explain myself on 2 separate topics like that. But at the same time, I'd hate to have neither grant get through because, it's like, I don't know.
Sure.
I've been debating a lot on what's the right strategy here.
Well, ultimately, you have to think about what problem you're trying to solve, how well you can solve it with that plan of action, how well the monies that are available to you will help you do that, and how tightly that is grooved into either a startup program, taking a startup to a full, or taking a full existing program and improving it in ways that hit those student outcomes and indicators that are shown in the RFA. If I were to say one's better than the other right now, I'd be flipping a coin and throwing a dart. But I think you have to think about where your impact is going to fall. Gabby, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, and I think, Chris, to your question, you're not going to get disqualified, or those grants aren't going to be not reviewed if you submit 2 separate ones. I think you could argue that having 2 separate ones will do what you were just saying, where you might be able to express fully and maybe more consistently or coherently if they're separated. I think to some of the questions and descriptions of what we've heard today, we really want to make sure that CTE programs are at the focus of each proposal, and that a grant reviewer is going to be able to read those and clearly be able to say, okay, this is what this program or this project is going to be doing to support CTE programs of study. So if that means submitting 2 applications, but they're from the same district or whatnot, that's fine. But know that if you do submit one for both of those projects, I don't know if you'll be limiting yourself if one is going to have a little chunk of money, the other's going to have the rest, but it still has to be under that threshold of 125,000. So those are some considerations to make.
Thanks, Gabby, for chiming in. Anna.
Hey, I'm just waiting. Okay. My last student just walked out the door. Okay. So I had talked with you guys about what our plan is. I've met a couple of times with district office people. And what I'm learning is that they're okay with me writing a grant for vehicles, but they're not going to contribute anything in the long run to help me with them. So like no maintenance, no certification, no gas, that kind of thing. So in the efforts of kind of braiding funds and figuring out how we keep this going, are you guys okay with using Pathways funds as braided funds? Because I think that's probably how I'm going to keep this subsisting in the future, is that I'm going to have to set aside my budget for, my insurance and to pay, because we outsource our busing too. So to pay our bus people to do the certification and the safety checks every 3 months, and then I'm going to have to pay for insurance. So is that kosher with you guys that we do Pathways as braided funds?
I'm going to ask Gabby. I have a notion, but I want to share the fun here.
Yeah, my first thought is that I'd like us to go to our own legal department on that end. However, it's of course disappointing to hear that your school and district will be helping with that, which I think also brings into question a couple other things of like, okay, so if the school isn't going to do anything, is this vehicle going to be insured and technically under your name, Anna?
No, they're willing to let us have it on the insurance, but they want us to pay for the insurance. They're willing to let us use First Student, which is our busing, to do the safety checks and the certifications, but they don't necessarily want to pay for that. So their idea was that I buy the vehicles and I lease them to First Student, and they maintain all of the insurance and the gas and everything else, but they have to be at First Student, not it did not seem like a good idea to me at all. I'm trying to set up another meeting, but they're not really talking back to me. So yeah, they're willing to be the people that, like, it'll be owned by our program. They're willing to cover the vehicles for insurance, but they don't want to pay for any of the things.
Yeah, that's okay. Good to know. I guess my first reaction will be maybe we can set up our team, and you, Anna, can set up a time to chat, but would like some time to go back to our team and our guidance team just to find out some things that we need to consider, so we support you and lead you in the right direction.
Thank you. I would appreciate that.
This probably qualifies for the description of an enigma wrapped in a conundrum. So
I love the idea.
It can be fun on certain days of the week, right? I wholeheartedly agree with Gabby that this requires a deeper look. So we're going to pass on giving you an answer right now.
Yeah, that's fine. And even if you guys want to do some investigating and then send me an email, I have a couple of different people at the district office that I've asked to meet with. And they've been there maybe a little bit longer. Maybe they're less jaded. So I'm hoping that I can get some more information. I just need to know soon so that I can pivot and look at some of our other ideas instead. So
yeah, let's see if we can at least give you an idea by Friday.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Even like by the end of next week would be fine.
Okay. We'll see what we can do about touching base with our folks and at least giving you some information by Friday, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Anna,
Thank you.
Make sure you also look at Measure 98 funds.
Well, the hard thing in our district is that basically the entirety of our Measure 98 funds were used to build our makerspace. And basically we borrowed, well, I shouldn't say we because I didn't do this, but the district office borrowed from Measure 98 for like a couple of years kind of a deal where they took it from other funding, but all the Measure 98 goes to our makerspace in the district.
Well, Career Pathways Fund sounds like it's for you. Let's find out. Yeah.
I know, and I mean, I've gotten it, I got a big chunk last year. I've got 70 students that I'm going to get funding, or 72 for this year, that are all the highly qualified low income. So I think it's going to be somewhere on like I don't know, last year it was like $25,000. And we're supposed to get that about that same amount as long as Pathways funding doesn't go away. So I know, Brian, it makes me sad. Like, I know that's what I'm worried about because I feel like that's what they're trying to push me to do, but I don't, yeah.
So, and I can have a conversation with them too. Here's the one thing that I would warn against is that Career Pathways funds is not a sure thing. And 2 years from now, when the biennium ends and the legislators choose not to continue to fund it, if that's the course they take, you're going to be without Career Pathways funds and left holding two vans that you
Can you hear me?
can't
See
use.
me? Hello?
Yeah.
Oh.
We can talk about that too.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Brian. Other questions?
I guess I have one more question. Thank you.
Go for it, Laura.
We're actually really happy that you extended the deadline. That gives us a little bit more time to prepare. So thank you. I just wanted to know that doesn't mean that the funds, I think I looked and everything still needs to be expended by June 30, 2023 still. That has not changed. Is that correct?
That will not change. It's the last day of the fiscal year, but also the last day of the biennium. And things don't cross the line into new biennia. So that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I must have glossed right over the deadline extension. What's the new date?
For which?
All right, you're not talking about the grant applications?
No, she was talking about
okay.
the period by which all funds need to be expended and all hardware needs to be on your loading dock and all construction needs to be done. And that's still June 30 of 2023. Okay. The grant itself needs to be submitted by 5 p.m. on January 10th.
But January 10th?
Yes. And you may want, since this appears to be news, I think what I would do is trip on over to, there was a link that Kyle put in a little bit earlier that goes to the Revit webpage, and I think he may have dropped it in just again. And on that page, you'll see the link to the revised updated RFA. There it is now in chat. So I would go there and take a look. But we did have a change in the due date, which made us all feel better. So that gives you a little bit more time to sort through and make decisions and have conversations that you need to have. So I'd like to think we brightened your afternoon.
I really appreciate the pushback of the due date, just because we're back into in-person learning and there's just a lot of stuff going on. And I really appreciate this webinar. I've learned a lot that I needed to learn. So thank you, guys.
Super. Delighted. Comments, questions?
Now all of my questions and comments can wait for a little while. You made my world dramatically better.
I was just thinking we probably should have re-announced that at the beginning. I'm sorry.
That's funny, Chris.
So Chris, would you like to push conversation out a little ways then?
For our Friday chat? Well, my questions, it's just the questions concerning how if it said if you're going to do anything that is a capital project, you are required to have a conversation with somebody from ODE. So this is that conversation.
It's
and I think that I'm still prepared enough. I'm prepared enough to give you the bones of the proposal if that's what you need. If you're looking, you need actual financials for that conversation, then I can wait. But if it's just the concept, then I'll be prepared on Friday.
Okay, let's, right now we're looking at bones. We're not expecting people to have things, down to the gnat's eyebrow because people simply have not had the time to do that, but the broad brush strokes around what you hope to do. So let's go ahead and just move that back to Friday.
Sounds good.
Great. Brian, that's a good question. I think what we're going to do is seriously look at opening up the door to doing more of these open mic coffee talk style things where people can ping us and float ideas, and for anything that is a deeper or bigger lift than to say go ahead and have folks line up to have a separate conversation with us. But we want to make sure everyone's in a good place.
I'm just thinking that, I mean, it's a really great point, and I'm glad Chris is happy about that too. I know we all were. But because of this extension, it allows us way more in depth and to expand on our grant proposals. And so I'm guessing that there's going to be some very in the weeds type of questions that come up between now and January. And I'm just hoping that you guys continue to offer the open talks. And if you could post them on the revitalization grant page when you guys decide, that would be amazing. Thanks, Dan.
You betcha. You're welcome, Brian. Mike, you've unmuted.
Yeah, just a quick question for you. You know what I mean? Hey, so I kind of along the same lines. So will it'll be the same format as far as like webinars put out there, or because like I've been in all these and I think they're very helpful and beneficial, but I know you guys are extremely busy. So but of course, as we start to get down to the wire and all these things are for completing them, questions arise. So like right now, working on my grant narrative, and I've got a few questions that I might reach out personally, but so we're right there. And so the format, do you guys have any idea what that might look like moving forward, or just reach out to you guys individually?
Well, you always have the option to reach out to us individually. And again, the best reach is to use the ode.cte revitalization email. So you have a bigger catchment that way. We'll make sure to get to you. And we're going to talk now, since the date has been pushed out the way it has, to talk about what we want to do with this sort of a format, which seems to be very helpful and pretty successful because people get their questions answered. If they have a bigger question, they can always set an appointment to have a deeper conversation, but it gives that sort of predictability and reliability that we're going to be there. And we want to be there because we know this is a big lift and people are up to their earlobes in everything right now, and back to in-person learning and dealing with just everything that's going on. So it will be more of this format. I can't see us necessarily doing any more webinars in those discrete areas that we did earlier, because that basically hit the mechanics of what you need to do as you look at budget and narrative and all of that. But to have this structure sounds like it makes good sense, because then you can let us know what you need and then we can hopefully deliver it. And if we can't deliver it, we will find out the answer and get it to you.
Very good. Thanks a lot for all your help, all you guys. And it's been a pleasure, and look forward to the work for the next couple months. Hey, excellent. By the way, how many grants have you guys charted to possibly being approved, or how much money is allocated? I mean, what's the ballpark with that? Is that kind of a fair question or not?
Oh, it's a very fair question. The total sum that was legislatively appropriated for this particular grant program was $7.3 million.
Okay.
So back of the envelope math, I don't know, 54.
Just excited that everybody's sort of showing up and we're getting all the emails and questions that we are, because we weren't really sure who would have capacity or interest this time around, just because of the major lifts that everyone has been doing this year. So We're just, thank you for even being interested in devoting some time to this. And we hope that it's obviously going to meet your needs and your students' needs and your community's needs.
And Mike, my back of the envelope math was off. It would be 58 grants. I had to grab my calculator, so.
Yeah. Well, let's just say it's a few less than what I calculated in my head, but we're good. So we just got to make sure they're good.
Quality and making sure that those learners get what they need to be successful, and we're driving real quality into the programs of study. That's really what it's all about, because ultimately these people are going to be taking care of the world when we retire, and we want to set them up in a good way to do that. And what better way to do it than CTE? And Kyle, thank you very much. Has just provided us with a couple of things in the chat. One you've already seen, which is the email address for the Revit team. And the other one that he just put up was the link to the webinars. The webinars that have taken place were recorded. The recordings are available to you online. We will also update that page as we work to do additional supports to carry you through the grant process. As I used to say to my students, questions, comments, concerns. Chuck, great idea. Appreciate that. We will definitely give that a look. Well, it looks like we are just about good to go. You are incredibly welcome. We appreciate all of you taking time out of your incredibly busy schedules to pop in for this. Hope it's been valuable, and we look forward to talking with you on down the road.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. There we go.
And that's a wrap.
Thank you, Kyle.
Maybe next Tuesday or next week when we have our Revit meeting, we'll schedule the next office hours.
Yeah, good idea. Decide how we.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm interrupting you.
No, decide how we want to stack them up and what's going to be a reasonable cycle.
Yeah. I would assume at least for November, we would do one before Thanksgiving and then have two in December and call it good.
Yeah, we can always gauge the demand. I don't know if there's any point in doing one the first part of January, because by then, if people are still asking questions, I would be like a little concerned. Agreed. Although I have my short list of people who will be asking questions in early January.
I would also think that we would want to do another blast through some of our communication channels, just so that people, again, are aware of the